Steph Curry has the opportunity tonight to actually say night-night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I have to say, entering tonight's game, I thought the Golden State Warriors might show up a little bit flat after they got absolutely trounced by the Cleveland Cavaliers on Friday night, but the exact opposite actually happened. And I have to tell you, seriously, when you have an opportunity, and I'm always saying this, when you have an opportunity, I don't care if it's in person or on television, to watch greatness, you should do it regardless of what the sport is. And I have to say, every time I have the opportunity, either in person or on television, to watch Steph Curry play, I am taking full advantage of it. Look, I'd rather do that than go spend an hour at Kohl's or at Target or at Walmart or at Costco. I am just saying, ultimately, at the end of the day, what did we see tonight from the Golden State Warriors? We saw a team that is now 8-2, that got absolutely throttled on Friday night, bounced back. Steve Kerr is playing an 11 or 12 player rotation night in and night out. Nobody else in the NBA is doing that, at least not night in and night out, and certainly not intentionally. The strategy here is to actually do that. And in tonight's game, Steph was just Steph. He was 36 points, 7 threes, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. I mean, 13 for 23. It was, if you will, a classic night-night Steph Curry performance that he actually put on against Oklahoma City. And in the Thunder's defense, Chet Holmgren did go down pretty early in the game, took a really hard spill. I'm not sure exactly what the injury is. It could be an ankle or a hip injury, but it was a hard spill. I mean, you could actually hear the thump when he hit the ground. At the end of the day, though, this Golden State Warriors team, right, on Wednesday, ended up beating Boston by, I think it was 6. Then they get absolutely throttled. At one point are down by 43 against the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland. In fact, Cleveland sets a record for the most points they've ever scored as a franchise in the half. And then they come back and they bounce back with an outstanding defensive performance tonight. 127 to 116. I talked about Steph's, offensive production. But at the end of the day, think about this. How do you think this Warrior team would do if the playoffs actually started next week? I mean, seriously, would you have this Golden State Warriors team as a legitimate contender, a legitimate threat at this point? From what you've seen out of the Western Conference to this point, this is, in my opinion, an absolutely legitimate threat, especially with a head coach like Steve Kerr and a extremely deep bench as well. Now, personally, I think the Warriors are going to have to make a move. They're going to have to disrupt this 12-person player rotation. They're going to have to trade for something to bring in a little bit more bodies, so to speak, so that they can bang a little bit more with some of the bigger teams, especially when we get into the playoffs. Now, it's early in the season. We are just 10 games into the season. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, though, if the playoffs were to start on Monday with the Warriors the way they played right now. And you have to remember, they'd be the second seed in the Western Conference right now, maybe even tied for first. I don't know yet if Phoenix is going to win tonight or if they're going to end up losing to Sacramento. But as I started to do this podcast, the Golden State Warriors were currently tied with OKC in second. And yet they went on the road tonight into OKC and handled their business. They didn't have a 12-player rotation. They actually had an 11-player rotation tonight. Kerr cut back a little bit. And when you look at the box score from tonight's game, it just becomes, it's just really interesting. Like, I encourage you all who have the chance to actually go back and watch any of these Golden State Warrior games from the past week to actually just watch what Steve Kerr is doing from a player rotation perspective. It is very interesting. Now, we talked about Steph Curry's numbers. Andrew Wiggins actually played 35 minutes tonight. As my wife calls him, Wiggy Wiggy, scored 18 points, had 8 rebounds, and 5 assists on the game. Draymond Green, 11 assists, 8 points, and 4 rebounds. DeAnthony Melton, who I was convinced was totally washed up. I saw him play for my Minnesota Timberwolves last season. He was horrible. But Steve Kerr knows how to get if there's anything good in a basketball player, Steve Kerr will find a way to get it out of him. And that's what they're doing with DeAnthony Melton at this point, because you go watch what he did with the Timberwolves last year. He was a shell of his former self. 19 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists. Jonathan Kuminga, 20 points tonight. Buddy Hield only played 21 minutes, had 8 points. Kyle Anderson, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 6 points in 20 minutes of play. Now, you have to remember, Kyle Anderson is, if you will, a slower version of Draymond Green. And they have a second player sort of like Draymond Green, who's tall and big and can rebound, who can also run the offensive set. And that's what they have with slow-mo there. Brandon Brzezinski didn't score at all, but he did play 15 minutes. Gary Payton, the second, played scored 7 points, played 15 minutes, and he's a defensive specialist. Moses Moody got himself 11 minutes tonight. And then no Kayvon Looney, Lindy Waters, Reese Beckham, Pat Spencer, Guy Santos. None of them got into the game tonight. That being said, you look at it, and if you go back and watch the tape, it's just a masterful job by Steve Kerr. I've talked about the job that Jerry Stackhouse has done with the defense, being new on the coaching staff this year. Just a huge difference for this Golden State Warrior team. Now, look, it's a long season, so the playoffs don't start tomorrow. And injuries happen, and players will actually age. And we know that Steph Curry, for the most part, is looking like he's turned back time a little bit. But as the season goes on, will the wear and tear of the 82-game season take a toll? How will that toll take on this Golden State Warriors team? Now, assuming everybody is healthy heading into the playoffs, and assuming the Warriors actually do make a move or two at the trading deadline, I think that this Golden State Warriors team could certainly be a very dangerous team. Do I think they're going to beat a Dallas Mavericks or Oklahoma City Thunder in a 7-game series? I think they could beat Dallas if they make the right move. Do I think they could beat Oklahoma City's Thunder in a 7-game series? And a lot of people out there would tell you no. But based on what we've seen, based on the evidence that we have in front of us at this point, at this stage of the season, yeah, why not? I mean, we've seen the Warriors surprise people before, and we just know how greatness is in sports. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs are 9-0 and haven't played well in half of the games that they've won so far this season in the NFL. We just know that greatness, especially when it is not skiing down the backside of Career Mountain yet, and when Steph Curry, certainly deserves to be treated as an entity, a thing that can ultimately actually take a team all the way to the championship. We saw Steph Curry do it just 2.5 years ago. Why couldn't he do it this year? Once again, I think the Warriors would have to make a move or two. That being said, with the evidence that we have in front of us, with what we've seen through 10 games in the regular season so far. And I'm not trying to be a Northern California homer. As you all know, I'm based up here in the Silicon Valley, but I'm a Timberwolves and a Laker fan first. Long story for another day. So I'm definitely not trying to be a homer for the Golden State Warriors. And I certainly respect the job that the other teams have done in the association to this point. I'm checking right now to see if Phoenix actually won tonight or if they ended up losing. I think that game is actually in overtime. And currently, Phoenix is actually down by 6. So lastly tonight, because this is going to be our Sunday night NBA rundown show, a couple other games today in the association. Nothing terribly surprising happened as far as I'm concerned. The Rockets took care of the Pistons. The Celtics took care of the very, very, very bad Milwaukee Bucks. Pacers ended up beating the New York Knicks. As we know, the history of those two teams, their styles of play, 132 points were scored by the Indiana Pacers today. Like, for me, not terribly surprising. The Magic beat a Washington Wizards team. Yes, I know Pablo's not playing, but still 121-94. Not terribly surprising. The Heat went into Minnesota. The Timberwolves basically melted down and handed that game to the Heat. A little bit of the surprising, considering that Jimmy Butler didn't play tonight. I think if you think about this Miami Heat team and you think about a Miami Heat team without Jimmy Butler on it, I think we are moving closer and closer to that actually becoming a reality. We talked about the Warriors. Nuggets beat the Mavericks at home by 2 points in tonight's game. Lakers are currently down by 8 early in the second half to the Raptors in Los Angeles. And the Trailblazers are just getting clobbered by the Grizzlies at this point. And as I mentioned, the Suns and the Kings are in overtime, and the Kings look like, at least at this point with about 2.5 minutes to go, that the Kings are actually going to win that game. One funny note from around the association today, Celtics Jaylen Brown calls Giannis a child after an offensive foul and fake handshake. Absolutely love Jaylen Brown. He never minces words, does he? If he sees or hears something that he doesn't like, he is not afraid to certainly comment on it. All right, that is it for today's NBA rundown. I want to thank everybody out there for tuning in. Thanks for all of your support on our YouTube channel, our podcast, our audio version of this, which is available across all the audio or podcast networks, is starting to really blow up. So thanks so much for all of your support there. Please pass along the show to others. For the NBA Rundown, I am Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.